Now, the threshold of proof within a coded language is a problem itself. And this is now even moving more to digital spaces. We have active TikToks, we have active Instagram, we have these other coded WhatsApp pages where things are moving fast. I think it's imperative that the existing institutions also align with these realities to be able to arrest issues. Otherwise, we are likely to see citizens taking things in their own hands because of feelings of state or institutional failure to be able to address their issues. Then there is need for concerted efforts to rally behind institutions championing for this. Because, as you said, the civic space is shrinking. Nobody wants to act in isolation. Everybody wants to act in a space where they feel a sense of safety and collectiveness in the
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Mwekali. Welcome to the Gender Equality and Human Rights podcast series. And today I have an amazing guest, being that we are almost heading to election in Kenya. So I'm going to let my guest introduce herself. Could you please introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do, and what you love doing.
Yes, thank you very much, Mwekali, for having me. My name is Elizabeth Atieno Rombo. I am a peacebuilding practitioner, and I also serve as the platform manager, peacebuilding and conflict transformation at Act Change Transform.
Oh, amazing.
Yes, and I am a peace builder, so I love building peace. I like putting smiles on disenfranchised communities. I like working with women and other marginalized groups, so you can call them the special interest groups, to advance issues relating to peace and security.
Oh, amazing.
Thank you.
Maybe Elizabeth, we are seeing the current trend in Kenya, where we're seeing different political parties aligning. Could you maybe please tell us in a few, what are the evolving peace and security issues that we are seeing in Kenya currently?
Yes, thank you very much. If you look at Kenyan context presently, being that we are in the electioneering period, things are fast shifting. Counties that were previously rated as low-risk counties are now on the medium to high-risk counties. And this is also coupled with a lot of changing conflict hotspots. We used to have the likes of Mathare. Of course, they still remain conflict hotspots, the likes of Kibera. But now we are seeing Kitengela, which is one of the emerging frontiers for demonstrations. And we're also seeing Ruiru. So this points to a certain direction that the conflict trends are fast shifting. And so as peace building actors in this space, we need to be more positioned and aligned strategically to look at these shifts. Kitui was not one of the counties that was known for conflicts, but you have seen what has been happening in the recent weeks. Besides that also, the Horn of Africa has had the worst heat drought in years, and this has also strained the access to resources in the arid and the semi-arid areas. So in terms of peace and security, we are also seeing a proliferation of small arms and light weapons in the areas around Baringo, areas around West Pokot, areas around Turkana, borders with Kenya and South Sudan, borders of Kenya and Uganda, borders of Kenya and Ethiopia. So this just compounds to the complexity of issues that we are having in the peace and security space. Beyond that also, I think you have also seen a growing rise on intolerance. Political attacks are coming. We have lost many
Rachel?
people. We lost Rachel, and
Wonderful.
just yesterday there's a lady that was
Attacked in Kibera.
with hot water. And this is not something that people should sit pretty and watch. It's a wake-up call that there is a lot of cohesion building initiatives that are needed. Unlike the previous election cycles, where interventions were largely focused on the post-election phase, there is a lot of gravitation towards the pre-election phase, and conflicts are rising. You have seen the by-elections, and the tensions therein. The loss of Raila Amolo Odinga, who's known to be the father of democracy. He's known for championing for democratic ideals way back from the multi-party democracy to the rebirth of devolution to the several strides on constitutional reforms, the several referendums for those who recall these. So he was the epitome of democracy in Kenya and Africa worldwide. And his loss was a very big blow. And as a result of that, I think you have seen the effects of that in terms of, for example, Kisumu didn't come out strongly in the demonstrations when there was the second fuel go slow, the Matatu strike.
Yeah.
And that they were like, we have demonstrated enough. We just want action. And the places like Kibera, where you would have expected a lot of the usual zeal on demonstrations, went on a go slow. Mathare on a go slow. Then there are discussions around, I think you were seeing the political amalgamations that are going on around the country and stuff. So this is an interesting time to watch in terms of this opposition. I would call it a lacuna in terms of a steadfast opposition figure that people looked up to, and looking at the implication of that on peace and security, everybody is wondering who's going to stand for us, who's going to speak loud when our rights are being trampled upon, who is going to call sanity on the institutions that are infringing on human rights. I know there are several civil society organizations working in that space, but that absence, of course, will will go a long way in terms of being able to shape how our political landscape goes. And remember, we have most governors serving their second term. So we are gearing up for a very fierce party primaries. So one of the things that we need to actually be very keen on is representation of women and youth in these political party nominations.
Yes.
And then, in terms of sense of safety and security, there is a surge in technologically induced gender-based violence, and conflicts have moved from the traditional fight to online spaces. We have the deep fakes, we have AIs and all these other things, which also dehumanize the women who want to vie for positions. Then we have the financial muscle that then is also an impediment. So there are quite a lot of things in this peace and security landscape that needs a critical eye going forward. Then institutional reforms. Everybody is looking forward to the IEBC.
Because that's also like the other part I wanted you, maybe in the next question, if we go to the institution.
Yes.
And even SDG 16, which is on also peace and strong institution.
Yes.
So I know we have the UN Security Council Resolution 2250, which focuses on youth, and 1325, which takes me back to Samia's, I think was it 2017, through another comrade called Mildred Ngesa, we're doing a campaign called Women We Are Afraid. And this campaign was around the UN Security Council Resolution 1325, on now we need to be protected, and now we need to be involved in peace negotiation, or even mechanisms that are put in place to ensure that women and girls are safe. But looking the interconnection of all this intersectionality around peace, and trying to look at it also from a feminist perspective, and seeing that also in the country where also femicide is on increase, like the way you mentioned, and may also rest in peace, Rachel Wandeto, who was killed because of tattooing a president's face on her body. And then also yesterday we saw another woman also being attacked.
For chanting two-term.
For chanting two-term. And this is something that can evolve. If now you chant one time, you can also be attacked. So what are the mechanisms that you feel as ACT and also from your own expertise that we need to put in effort beyond to what we are used to of violence after election? Because everybody has also their political stand. So I'd really want to hear like some of the things that also you're looking forward in putting in place to ensure that we don't get many women getting killed, but also linking peace and security with femicide.
Yes, thank you very much. And it's indeed worrying. It's a worrying trend, and it's a wrong trajectory, being that we are seeing these numbers in a span of about 4 days, you get some very unfortunate news, coupled with the disappearance of children that you're now seeing happening in the country. So one of the critical things that ACT is doing, and alongside the other actors, ACT has been funded by Denmark to implement a women, peace and security program that aims at strengthening localization of the national action plans to ensure more inclusion of women in these peace and security structures. The value of doing this is that, traditionally women do a lot, but what they do is hardly recognized.
Yes.
And even when they exist in spaces, the means of decision making, it is very difficult to put a hand on the extent to which the propositions they make are taken up into the decision-making process. So we come in at that particular point to strengthen engagements, both at the local level and also working with the State Department for Gender and Affirmative Action to champion implementation of Kenya National Action Plan 3. Remember, UN Resolution 1325 has come a long way. We have the two-thirds gender rule in Kenya, which is still a mirage.
Which is still...
We come in to lead strategic discussions, both with the women at the grassroots, but also with the decision makers, to bridge this deficit that exists in terms of participation and being able to expand the security and peace space, to have not only women present, but women making and influencing decisions around participation, around protection, and all these other things. Then the other thing that is also important, that it is incumbent upon the security structures. The femicides you see and all these other attacks and stuff and the slow response, it means the security apparatus need to step up so that crime does not just become the norm. Because we see the people that perpetrate these crimes, when you follow the judicial process, you don't quite get the tail end to it. So this creates a culture of impunity that is growing over time. There is need to strengthen gender desks and referral pathways, especially for victims of gender-based violence and any other threats and intimidation. But most importantly is we need to work on the peace structures that exist so that we strengthen the early warning and early response. Because there are strong indications or pointers to potential violence. And these are things that we must pay a close attention to. Working closely with institutions to build trust. Researchers have shown that there are trust deficits in the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commissions. There are jitters with the judiciary and issues on impartiality. There are issues of NCIC, especially being able to prosecute issues of hate speech and stuff like that. So this is the right time for these institutions to embrace synergies and coordinations. And I will draw special attention to Office of the Registrar of Political Parties so that we need to see more inclusion of women and youth in these upcoming party primaries if we are to counter these issues around apathy, issues around participation, issues around marginalization, and just broadening discussions.
So Elizabeth, when you look with the current politics and political figures and women, peace and security and representation, and with the current face of Kenya, whether that is Linda Mwananchi, there's Skiza Ground,
Linda Ground,
there's one term, there's two term, there's tunajielewa, tujielewi there in the middle, yeah? And if you see these formations, they are still also very patriarchal. We don't see representation of women who can be able to negotiate or sit in decision-making around peace. And currently, and I know there are many others, but currently the few faces we have seen, it's Gladys Wanga, who is the governor for Migori, who is the chair, Homa Bay, sorry, and is the chair of ODM, right? And then we also have Martha Karua, who is also having her own political party. So from your own thoughts and analysis, how do we get more women to join also political parties, to be able to negotiate for peace inside also, and women representation, but at the same time bringing this figure of, if anything's happened, even with the current state, they're able to say women are not safe, and these are their recommendations.
Yes, thank you very much. And there is no other time for this conversation other than this time that we have. And one of the interesting things to also note is different countries across Africa, the likes of Rwanda, have made commendable strides, and they have the biggest representation of women in their government. But when you come back home, there are several factors. First of all, political landscape has been dominated by patriarchy, male dominators, as you say. But this was the reason why we need more resources to be able to bridge this to deficits around participation, inclusion, but we still have a long way to go. Having said that, one of the things that is incumbent upon the Office of Register of Political Parties and also the political parties themselves is that they need to be the wheels to demonstrate that they value women leadership and encourage and make a level playground so that we have more women come in as potential candidates. The challenge that has inhibited women participation is that if you are a woman, the first thing they ask is where she married. Show as your husband before you come, as if that is a criteria to be able to get a political seat. So we have such kind of sentiments along other things that even the use of AI to strip women of their dignity, to dehumanize them in ways that just make them shy away from participating in these processes. So we need an upscale voter in civic education so that we can encourage more younger women who want to come up. And political parties are the wheels of democracy. So this is the time for the many political parties that we have to come out here and showcase to the citizens where and why they need to belong somewhere, and then encourage them to exercise their democratic right. And they can be very intentional to make sure that in the list they present to the registrar, we have a significantly high labor of men and women vying for positions. Then the other thing that makes them shy away is the campaign finances. Elections are finance intense, and sometimes the women sit at a disadvantaged position to be able to articulate their issues. Then there is need for support, strategic support through the Kenya Women Parliamentary Association, KEWOPA, to build capacities of aspirants to be able to package themselves, sell themselves in issue-based content so that people can identify with the issues that they present. And I think also working with the judiciary just to make sure that some of the institutional gains that have been made over the years still remain consolidated as we move into the political space. And also incentivizing more women to come out, encourage them. Come out. Let's grab this space and take things going. Yes.
There's one bit, when you look also on structural violence and peace and security, there's one bit of encouraging women to come out, which is important. There's another bit of also electing what we say in feminist leader, or women also, not just women, but also leaders who believe in values that are more human rights. But looking on how do we get also women who deserve to be in those political seats, but at the same time, ensuring they have resources to be in those positions of power. So I'd really want you maybe to break in how do we get also, not only just women, but women who believe in the cause, also men who believe in the cause, than just putting people in position of power for the sake of putting them in position of power. From a peace perspective, how do we bridge these contradictions around representation, around resources, around even peace and justice?
Yes, I think it's about time that people weed out leaders that do not serve the interest of the citizens, those that do not guarantee their sense of dignity, safety, and security. You realize that most of the time, elections of these leaders is not issue-based. It is because the wave in the region is pointing to zone A, or is it pointing to zone B? So we lose sight of the people championing for ideals. And I think if you look at now, there have been tensions around this. There is no issues around zoning versus what. So people believe this is our area, you shouldn't come here. But in terms of being able to incentivize that, there is one thing that is the Campaign Financing Act that is sitting pretty somewhere. I am not sure when the parliament is, or what the parliament is thinking around that. Because if that is passed, then it will create a level playground for the smaller people with a not a bigger financial muscle to be able to participate in these processes. That is one elephant in the room that sits with the parliament, and it is incumbent upon the citizens and even the civil society organization and other actors to implore upon the parliament to have a reconsideration in terms of that. Then the other thing is when you look at these political parties themselves, being that they are male-driven, I think the people at the helm of these political parties also need to take initiative to be the champions for these women inclusion into these positions. Because in the WPS cycles, male champions have really helped transform a lot globally. How about if we translate the same energy into the political landscape? A lot more will be done. Then having more women at the center of early warning and early response and decision making is very integral, because they will be able to track what are the emerging trends, how are the scenarios unfolding, what are the implications on these, and then the women's situation rooms. What are they presenting in terms of women and how they are impacted in the pre-election phase, during the election phase, the post-election phase? How do we work on institutional strengthening so that we do not have to come and say, for example, Party A needs to give us this number, but they reason and tell us this is what we give you. So they will meet the constitutional, they will meet the threshold of submission to the ORPP. But what happens to those that are put inside there? So I think there is also need to create that balance. You see, when the women member of the women representative position was created as one of those affirmative decisions of women, people are like, if we want more women beyond the women representative position, can we have other women coming up as governors? In this country to date, if you take stock of how many women governors we have, I don't think there are more than 10.
There were, I think, 7. Now after Carrera, I think now there are 6. So do you think you're going to have more or less in the next election?
That is the question for you and me to be on the lookout.
And what do you need to tell the public? Is there something you need to stress? Because also there's no way we need to have gain and then go back and roll back without getting more.
Yes, we need a more sensitized public, especially on why it's important to include women in leadership. You know, women undertake a lot of informal roles, and these informal roles have brokered peace where men at the table could not be able to do something. So there is something about the maternal instinct in women in leadership that usually, if well built upon, can catalyze a lot of humanized leadership and approaches. So, for example, if the governor is male, why can't they take a running mate as a woman? If
But
that
not
happens,
as a token, but
not as
also
a token.
yeah.
And how about if a woman wants to be the governor? Why can't a male deputize? And then we go. That is the missing link. And I think it's one of those interesting conversations that we continue to explore to see how best do we support these aspirants to be able to package, articulate their issues, and even security to them, because they're usually the most vulnerable during campaigns. You could be attacked, you could be violated in other very undignified ways. So a lot of different things happen, threats to their families. So just beyond looking at their participation, we need to eliminate the barriers to meaningful and inclusive participation of women, both in peace, security, and governance spectrum.
Wow.
Yes.
This is a very informative session. And it makes me also like reflect also with civic space. Because traditionally or ideally, when you talk about peace and security, majority of us, even the public, focuses on elections. But we don't look on how peace and security affects our daily lived reality. And especially even with most human rights defenders or even peace activists who organize in communities, and with the current geopolitical and the trends on civic space. And what also we saw with the Gen Z movement and even end femicide, where people went to exercise their democratic right on the street. But when you go to the street, which is also your right, you face police who are violent, you face also goons who are violent, and also lacking accountability. So from where you sit as we prepare to the next election, what are the themes and things and investment that you think, as an expert in this field, we need to put focus on without having an expense of social justice or human rights? Because there's this narrative within the activist space where people are told to focus with peace, ignore justice, or focus with justice, ignore peace. How do we have this connectivity that will ensure so civic space is there? Women are able to participate in protests without feeling they are going to be harassed sexually by police or they are going to be killed. Or young men, young women, they're not afraid of going to the streets and you get killed or arrested. So I'd really want to hear, like, how are you thinking of bringing peace and security aspect around protests?
Yes, thank you very much for contextualizing the realities that we have. Peace and justice are twins, if you ask me as a practitioner, because the absence of justice implies that we are going to create a cyclic and intractable or recurrence of conflicts. And what happens to the victims? I know there are usually parameters around redistributive justice, restorative justice, but in the context of the deliberations that we are having, the Constitution permits citizens the right of assembly
And protest.
and protest. Whereas if you look at the issues, and some people might tend to blame the youth, but for me, they are salient, structural, deep-seated issues around unemployment, issues around high cost of living, and so many other different things. So this disenfranchisement is a recipe for disaster. If you look at it very critically, the youth are a disempowered and a discouraged lot. And they are, in their discouragement and disempowerment, they have their strength. And that is how you saw the Gen Z protests. Because they felt the avenues where their grievances ought to have been listened to were somehow suppressed. So this actually, when after the protests, you saw there were significant shifts in formation of entities to try and unpack what it is. But the truth is the youth are unemployed. The cost of living is very high. There are vulnerabilities. And so how do you explain, for example, a graduate who's left university for the last 5 or 7 years is selling tomatoes? A young lady who wants to vie for a political position is told you're still too young to vie. Then there is a politician somewhere who has money and wants to intimidate a potential opponent. What happens? The youth are readily available. Give us some money, we will do some things. Beyond being used to create tensions, wreak havoc, there is also the positive side where we see a good rise in digital activism. The digital activism is really coming strongly to counter misinformation, disinformation, and all these other things. So this is one of the spaces that people really need to focus on strategically. The conflicts are no longer happening in the traditional grounds. The conflicts have moved online. So what is it that happens in these online spaces that guarantees a sense of safety and security?
Security.
And being able to express your opinion and participate effectively to that effect. Beyond looking at it in that context, the other thing that is really making this a challenge is a lack of opportunities for meaningful participation. People want issue-based dialogue, where governance issues are tabled and they're addressed correspondingly. So when these governance deficits emerge and people do not have strong pathways for expressing dissent and demanding accountability, despite us having had devolution over the years, I think you have seen some youth to go to county offices to demonstrate, oh, we provided services, we haven't been paid. There is a whole lot of different things that are going on. These are things that are piling up and building onto each other. The growing rise in femicide and all this intolerance and stuff draws us towards the institution path on the role of the police, the role of IPOA, the independent
Judiciary.
yes, the judiciary, and all these other entities to be able to guarantee the sense of safety and security for these youth that are demonstrating. Then if you also go to the other side of it, in terms of the youth being able to influence the budgeting cycles.
So before the budgeting, I want us to go back on the institution's accountability.
Yes.
Because you have really mentioned on the failure.
Yes.
Like you mentioned about the high cost of living, when you give services or even governance processes where you feel this governor is not inclusive, or my MCA, member of county assembly, or my member of parliament. But where I feel that sometimes accountability within the peace and security sector is not considered is also internally. When a police is able to harass sexually or violate protesters, like what we see also in Nyeri that happened recently, where is the accountability around peace and security?
Yes.
When you see women getting killed and then maybe we silo the struggle to gender organization or to human rights organization and not to peace sector, I think we lose an opportunity around localizing the whole resolution 1325 and 2250. So is there a possibility of also taking this issue of peace and security from a lived reality of police, they have failed, here's the accountability? Because when you kill people, people will continue protesting. When you talk about civic space and you're not allowing people to protest, you're also causing more conflict and violence as an institution compared to the public. So that accountability, how does it look like?
Yes. That accountability has been elusive because the independent institutions, such as IPOA, NCIC, independent institutions and commissions, are not empowered enough to be able to prosecute some of these issues. Because if IPOA is to follow the case through to the end, the evidence disappears mysteriously in between. And when it goes to the courts, the threshold, proof of burden, when already it exists, probably the admissibility of this becomes an issue. So I think it is important that these independent institutions are empowered more to execute their mandate. The NCIC and hate speech and all these other things, because we all know very well that hate speech has a potential for catalyzing violence.
Yeah.
Now, the threshold of proof within a coded language is a problem itself. And this is now even moving more to digital spaces. We have active TikToks, we have active Instagram, we have these other coded WhatsApp pages where things are moving fast. I think it's imperative that the existing institutions also align with these realities to be able to arrest issues. Otherwise, we are likely to see citizens taking things in their own hands because of feelings of state or institutional failure to be able to address their issues. Then there is need for concerted efforts to rally behind institutions championing for these. Because, as you said, the civic space is shrinking. Nobody wants to act in isolation. Everybody wants to act in a space where they feel a sense of safety and collectiveness in this. That is only achievable if we have an informed citizenry and an also empowered civic space to be able to decipher these issues and channel them strategically. both online and offline.
Offline.
Yes.
So I'm trying to look with the few minutes that you're left with. I know this work is very intense and brutal, emotionally, physically, and even economically. Because also when you talk about peace security, also you're dealing with power, politics, and different constituency. So how do you debrief? Like, how do you ensure that you're okay
Yes, thank you.
emotionally, or even for the other peace builder? And as you think through this, do you have enough resources for peace work, especially now? Do you have enough infrastructure that we can say now if Kenya will do election, we are good to go?
Yes, so thank you very much. It is quite unfortunate that sometimes when we speak about peace, people think of peace as an end and not part of a process. And that translates into the significant disparity in terms of the support allocated to institutions and processes that are championing for peace. In the context of elections, you will see a surge of investments. Oh, let us work towards a peaceful,
Community peace
democratic,
forums, dialogues.
very revamped. And then after elections, things go low. What does that tell you? It's in the culture. And then even the institutions that are supposed to champion for peace are grossly underfunded, both at the government level, but also within the donor working space.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the important things is also to discuss sustainability of these peace building investments that we have by encouraging the county governments, because across all these counties that have directorates and have departments of peace, they exist, but they are grossly under-resourced. Yet peace and security, without peace, there is insecurity.
Yes.
So all these need to be, they walk hand in hand. It's like a relay, coordinated, coordinated, coordinated. That is one of the things that is missing. Like right now, like I indicated to you earlier, we need a lot of investments pre-election. A lot of investment in cohesion building. You're seeing the fragmentations. The counties like Bungoma, counties like Migori, counties like Uasin Gishu, counties like Nyeri, counties like Garissa, counties like Kilifi are emerging as high-risk conflict areas. But is the investment corresponding with these realities to be able to mitigate? Even Nairobi is a county to watch.
Yes.
You have seen how things are unfolding. So beyond seeking resourcing, there is also need to incentivize or have an integrated approach to peace building.
Yeah.
Because there are conflicts that emanate from resources, there are conflicts that emanate from inequalities, there are conflicts that emanate from all different aspects. So an integrated, what the peace builders would call nexus peace building, is imperative going forward. As a peace builder, I always say peace building is like a marathon.
Yeah.
You don't run a marathon alone. You need people to hold your hands. Burnout is real in peace building. There is emotional trauma. You are dealing with people that have been in the front line of conflict. The transfer of trauma is real.
What is that one request you'll tell funders to invest on or fund peace and security work?
Yes, I wouldn't put a hand to say one thing. There is a lot of investment needed to be able to champion peace and security. There is need to support the local peace infrastructure. These local peace structures, because they are the first responders, they have the early warning information. They are in control of the response pathways, but they need support and coordination to be able to function. When you speak to most peace committees, they say we are a darling to people when elections are here. Everybody wants us to monitor and give them information. But after that, they drop us like a hot potato. That is the sustainability question that is there. And then there is need for stronger peace building. Is not a straight journey. Peace building is a journey with curves. You go, you reach a certain point, you straighten a bit, then the curves come. You can go 10 steps ahead, come back 7 steps because of the structural inequalities that exist. So anybody funding a peace building program should be able to fund the peace building program in the context of the realities that exist, which means if you go into a place that has tensions around resources, for you to be able to support an integrated process, there is need to support the climate adaptation aspect to it, fuse it with the social dynamics and how you strengthen that fabric and cohesion, and so many other things, both the community perspective and at the institutional level. Because if you empower the community, but the decision-making center is also pulling in different directions, it's like you're making a different thing. So lastly, you asked how I unwind. Yes. Peace builders unwind through the safe sister spaces because we know burnout is real. So we talk to them. We sometimes get psychosocial support. And just the fact that you see people that you have been able to put a smile on their faces, they are like, hey, as a result of these processes we have been through, we now have our counties allocating budgets. We feel we have a voice like women and all these other things. So those resilient stories are the things that keep me going as a peace builder.
How would be your utopia feminist peace and security lived reality looks like as we head to election?
Yes, you see, when people talk about peace and security, they think of guns, the police, hardware, part of it. As a peace building practitioner, for me, peace is somebody's ability to put a meal on their table. Has my neighbor eaten something? Has my child gone to school and come back safe? Has the woman in Turkana fetched firewood or water and come back home safe? That sense of safety and dignity, for me, is what peace and security ought to look like. Because sometimes people exploit the existing grievances to cause conflict and tension. And if you look at the investments on peace and security, it is largely the hardware part. The software part is left out. And there is a lot of labor that goes on there. That is how I would look at peace and security. A young girl in West Pokot going to fetch water and coming back home safe. That is peace and security for me. Women along the borderlines not being displaced because of tensions and lacking basic necessities, children not being able to access school. If they are able to access education, they have good sense of nutrition and all these other things going on, that is peace and security for me. Yes.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Stressing the point around even why it's important, first for funders, to be able to invest a lot of resources and infrastructure on peace and security. Why, as a public, we have to be keen on misinformation, disinformation around peace and security. That point is around technology-facilitated gender-based violence, on how it's fueling a lot of insecurity issue. And as well, emerging areas, narrative of new areas that are becoming more conflict, and why it's important to ensure that we're able to prevent it before it was, and ensure that the UN Security Council Resolution 2250-1325 is implemented. And to appreciate you and act for the amazing work you do. And we hope to continue this work collectively with other civil society movement to ensure that peace is centered with the lived reality of Kenya. Yeah, asante.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.